I recently published a course called It's About Time on Chessable. And the idea of this course was very simple. For years, I've noticed that as a coach, I could teach players to become religious about the dimension of time in chess. Time in the opening means getting your pieces out. Time to move, time to bring them into the game. And that's the easiest place to understand time, because in other parts of the game, it's a little bit more complicated to answer the question, time to do what? Now, in any beginner's journey, the hardest thing will be to learn to not give away stuff and how to take stuff. That will be the most fundamental aspect of the journey to get over 1,000 in the Chess Dojo rating system. That's about 1250 chess.com. Now, that being said, it's very easy, though, compared to the dimension of material, right, to learn the dimension of time. And that's why I did the course. Hopefully in just a couple hours, people can come to appreciate it. And so what I want to do today is to showcase several games in the dojo, beginning with the lowest cohort to 0 to 300, and that's 550 chess.com, and then working our way up to the 1,000 barrier, right? And we'll see a variety of different skill levels along the way, and we'll also see the same kind of mistakes as it relates to time. All right, let's go. So our first game here, we get a fairly standard opening. Fine. Okay, fine. And what I want us to see here is, so far, both sides are playing really GM moves. C3 is the first one that, we could debate because it's not bringing the pieces into the game. It's still not terrible, though. Now, what you see here are notes that were submitted by people in the dojo and to our database. And there's a principle of the program that going over your games is central to chess progress, and that by submitting your game, you will think clearly by writing more clearly, because you know that somebody might read it, such as me. Okay, so let's take a look. This, by the way, is at a very low level, but you can see the game is played so far at fairly high. Now, what I want to stress here is that white now needs to do what? To castle, okay? And instead plays knight b4, giving up a pawn. Now, dimension of material, giving up a pawn, but also time. And something I want to stress is, you will give away less material if you respect time. So castles by white would have been best. All right, boom, boom, boom. And then we get this trade. And then queen g5 is honestly a beautiful idea. Mrs. queen a4 check, picking up the bishop. And so that's an example of a mistake in the dimension of material. And that's harder to learn than what we're talking about today. All right, so as you can see, even at the very low level, pretty not bad in terms of time, but definitely mistakes like knight b4. And some of the things that one of the path, let's say, to chess progress is that when you get good at time, you'll realize that that's when the tactical opportunities come, when they don't respect time. All right, let's move on. So here we go. What's weird? Not bringing in the stuff, right? You got to bring in your peoples. Also weird, right? Why? Let's talk about it. This bishop might be our bad bishop, it's true, but it already has a path into the game. It's already ready to come out. So what would have been better? Knight f6 for sure. Just bring your people out. Bring them out. Okay, so c4, okay. Knight e7, weird. Why is knight f6 better? Because on knight e7, the knight is going to have to move again to let the bishop out, right? So that's going to cost another tempo. White gives it to us. Now we develop, very good. Takes notice when we took back, we won a tempo because our queen is developed on that square. Strange, right? Because white needs to be thinking about bringing out their pieces, not their pawns. Okay, boom. I would have preferred a6, which is about to come. And right, white gives away time. What should they have done? Castles. a6, good move, bringing out the rook. So you can see that this element of time, it's not actually that hard to learn. And once you become religious about it, boom, it's going to happen for you. All right, let's move on to the next cohort. All right, so fine. What's wrong with d3? Blocking in the bishop, right? Not a horrendous move, though. Okay, here we go. What's wrong with knight d5? You need to bring in your stuff, so bishop e2. Boom, 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 fine. e4 costs him another tempo to defend the pawn. Bishop g4, mostly fine. Fine. And h3, what's controversial about h3? Not respecting time. What does white need to do? Castles. Now, c5, not a great move, okay? Because, and it's funny, when people make these moves, they of course have some kind of rationale. And the idea is that c4, and somehow you're going to play c4 and the fox is going to get into the hen house. But what needs to happen? We need the castle, right? And black, in fact, plays f5 on the next move. Now, this move f5, let's talk about it a little bit. Let's say, in fact, we had castled and they had castled. I want to stress that f5 certainly makes some sense here because we are developing the rook. That is what time is in the opening. It's just getting your people involved into the game. All right, let's do another example. Here we go, queen h5. We see this all the time at the beginner levels, right? Now, knight c6, to my mind, seems best. Black plays queen e7 in fear. Notice that the queen is now blocking the bishop on f8. So we will owe white another move to get that bishop out. Strange, right? Thank you for the tempo. And then now we could have just won a piece by playing knight takes h5, right? So there you see like how at this level, time is easier to learn and material is the one where people have the hardest time learning it. Here, knight takes h5, black played d6 though, right? Queen f3, and here we want to play something like knight d4 to harass the queen, right? Not a developing move, knight d5. What does white need to do? They need to bring in their people. Strange, could have just taken it and played knight d4. Loss of time. Okay, so let's do another one. We're moving up the ranks here. Fine, strange. And as BG notes here, perhaps to defend bishop g5. Of course, they have some kind of rationale as to why they're losing time, but they're not being religious. And the idea is that, yes, you might see some threat, and yes, you might be tempted. Maybe sometimes you actually have to make a pawn move. But the religion of the matter is you should say, I'm going to really look to find a way not to move a pawn and rather to move a piece out, such as d5. Little strange, castles. White's playing great, okay? Boom, boom, boom. And now, very important, when, again, I want to stress, when your opponents lose time, that is when you should look for tactical opportunities. And one of the great things about the dojo is people are annotating their games, understanding where they went wrong. And here BG notes that, of course, DE would win a pawn. Now, not only would it win a pawn, but we also, in addition to taking this beautiful thing, have the option of a move like bishop a3, and that really highlights our development advantage that then black couldn't castle, right? Okay, let's do another game. So actually, let me stress, d5, mistake. Big mistake, giving black time to figure out their business. Okay, let's go to the next game. Normally, we take with a pawn and think notes that. Okay, queen e5, mistake. Now, one of the things I want to stress about this is that as we get higher, even though these mistakes are happening, the players annotating the games are understanding that moves like this are poor. Another thing that we get in this as we get better is we see the attempt, pretty good one, at evaluating the position in terms of material and time and quality of position. Those are the 3 dimensions. And that's what we're doing at the dojo, right? When you annotate your games, try to come to an assessment of what's going on. Queen d1, mistake. Now notice, I think this is driven partly in fear of the queen being attacked again. But on d1, it's important to see that that's also a move that you're going to owe black in terms of time, because eventually you're going to have to move the queen to get the rooks out, right? The rooks are going to be like, Baus, get out of my way. So therefore, queen d3 would have been better, right? These are just mistakes in time. Bishop e6, a3, poor move. Perhaps some kind of fear of black taking the pawn. Now, one thing I note in these games is a lot of times there's reactive moves. So for example, maybe white feels some tingling sensation on the a2 pawn. It's like, oh, I better do something about that bad boy, right? Now, what would have been better? Of course, it's either to castle or move this bishop somewhere. It's not hard. Again, learning how to play grandmaster level moves in terms of time is much easier than material. Material, people are going to be hanging stuff well beyond the 1,000 barrier. Okay? Okay, so queen d1, fine, right? And now black has a nice game. Notice too, they talked in the postmortem. That's a great thing we're doing at the dojo, encouraging people to talk afterwards about what's going on. And then we, both sides need to be thinking about time. And here, for example, boom, lost a piece. And that's what I'm saying. It's harder to learn the element of material than it is time. All right, so let's do another one. Here we go. Fine. Poor. Again, blocking in the bishop on f8 will mean that the queen will have to move again. And as I said before, when we get these positions where our opponent gives us time, that's when we want to, in particular, look for tactical chances for ourselves. Good move, tempo. Going back, castles, beautiful. We're about to play rook e1. Black correctly gets freaked out, but notice the queen is not happy. And really, from that one mistake with queen e7, black's game is already fairly poisoned. Okay, rook e1, bishop c4, beautiful. Knight c3, and we're threatening knight b5. And as white notes here, knight b5 would be absolutely crushing. Again, going over your games is how you will refine this technique of punishing your opponents for not respecting time. Up to the 1,000 barrier and even beyond, that is going to be the most common mistake you will find. They will be very stingy with their material, but they will give you time. And as I've said before, roughly 3 tempi. If you can win 3 tempi, that is worth a pawn. Nice variation here from white. Boom, winning everything. Okay, let's look at one more game. This is from the 900 to 1,000 cohort. So the edge before 1,000. All right. Fine. We have to make 2 pawn moves to get our bishops out. So a minimum of 2 pawn moves, right? So whether we go g3 or e3, as long as we get it out, it's fine. As white notes here, a passive mistaking move because now the bishop is blocked. Would have been better not to have been blocked. Castles, beautiful. Bishop e7, as he notes, bishop d6 might have been better. c4. Now, this one's interesting because you could say, Kraai, isn't that an unnecessary pawn move? Well, we could debate it. White certainly had other moves, but notice we're going to tickle that pawn on d5 to try to increase this scope of this bishop, and we also want some freedom for our queen. Okay, fine. We can debate this one too, but white has the intention of putting the bishop on b2. And notice, I don't even know what to do as black, but what white is responding to in criticizing bishop d7 is feel the cramp now of the black pieces. For example, how is this queen ever supposed to get out? And what is the bishop really doing on d7? Poor move, giving away time. Unclear if that move is helpful. Okay, and now white makes a move that could be seen as losing a tempo, but actually makes some sense. We open up the bishop on g2, and we say that if you take the knight, that we will win this pawn. So a very interesting and dynamic move. And I think black should probably take it and try knight g4. I think they're worse after that, but still black can play on. Bishop d6, losing another tempo. And one of the reasons I chose this game was to highlight this beautiful move, f4. So, not only do we have this incredible outpost on e5, but in terms of time, what I want to stress is we are involving our rook from where it stands with this move, f4. This move I call Federico the f-pawn. It's not always a great move, but if you can involve your rook, then absolutely. When black takes, I want us to see that that really is a full now development of our rook, and it is now a very powerful rook. Knight g4 was played, and now some very nice calculation from white. CD, allowing knight e3. Allowing, not missing it, but allowing it. Let's look. Boom. And the knight's stuck, so you got to recapture the pawn, and then we take this one, and we have a material advantage. So there you see a very high level of play from somebody who's not even technically over 1,000 yet, right? And they're getting stronger. They're getting stronger. But especially at the dojo, I'm hoping that this philosophy really comes through of winning time in the opening. Time is always important, but in the opening, it's the easiest to understand at first, right? And from there, you can understand time in other areas of the game as I go into in the course, right? Time in the opening, again, we need to get our people out, and you will find that your opponents are consistently, as in these games, giving you time. All right, so I'll leave it there.